In 1949, Manchester ran what it thought would be its last tram.
For the last time, these rattling and ungainly monsters made their way through the city streets. The last one of all bearing the Lord Mayor, Miss Kingsmill-Jones, and other civic dignitaries, and being driven by Councillor Barrett, chairman of the Transport Committee. And there they go into the depot for the last time. Had it not been for the war, London too might by now have discarded her trams. Still, what Manchester does today, London can still do tomorrow.
All over Britain, the tram was dying. But Blackpool plunged into the future. Trams had become one of Blackpool's money-spinning attractions, but in the cost-conscious 1950s, Blackpool Transport made a fatal error. They went for the cheapest option and ended up with a turkey, the Coronation Tram. This is the only Coronation still running of the 25 delivered in 1952.
The low loader came in and we realised this was the new tram, and one of the fitters went over, he'd been looking at it, and he asked the driver what this thing weighed, and he said 19 tonnes. And we thought, my God, and we sort of scrambled onto the tram. It had been a bit of a shower a few minutes before, and the seats were wet through, it was raining in. We all sensed that this was going to be a lemon.
Once again, the man behind the New Age tram was Walter Luff. His mistake was to complicate the simple machinery that had made his 1930s streamliner so popular.
Well, I wasn't keen on the Coronation tram at all. This tram had just like a joystick on your left, and you pushed it forward a notch at a time to get forward motion, and to brake you used to pull it back a notch at a time. Sometimes you'd find you'd pull the stick back and there wouldn't be a brake, you weren't pulling up. Suddenly realising you had no brake is fearful, you know.
The problems Johnny experienced were caused by the new Bamback system on the roof. Unlike conventional trams, it used the motors to both accelerate and brake.
Building tram cars was an exact science from the Victorian days, and all the bugs had then been ironed out. They put in a system here that would have been ideal for the London tubes, but we couldn't have these conditions on the Golden Mile.
The stop-start nature of the promenade heated the Bamback system to boiling point.
I took the readings the first night that this ran. The current consumption was over twice as much as they'd anticipated. They were literally shaking when I told them this. And we knew then that this was 19 tonnes, and no matter what they did, they were top heavy. And I thought they'd stop the whole thing. I really believed they'd go back to the manufacturers and they would do it. These trams were absolute death traps.
Transporting passengers was always the plan. Incinerating them was not.
There was a passenger standing next to me. I suddenly looked and his shirt began to disappear. It was disintegrating before my very eyes. It was lathering. I just couldn't believe my eyes. And I suddenly looked up and there was molten solder coming out of that trap up there, and it was just missing him. And I thought, God, they'll panic. And I moved him to one side with an arm round him like that. I'm sure he thought it was bent, this chap there. And it was dripping down.
They tried to save the Coronations by fitting conventional control gear, but Walter Luff's white elephants were mortally wounded.
The day eventually came when we had to part with them, and they were sold to a scrap merchant, each for £14, and his intention was to take them to a loop at Thornton Gate, set fire to them, and from the big funeral pyre he was going to extract the copper. But he set fire to the first one, and 4 fire engines arrived, and they put his fire out, and they insisted then that he burnt them up by oxyacetylene, and he played hell because even he was losing money on them. So they were game to the last, these things.
Despite the disaster of the Coronation, Blackpool Transport has found ways to make trams pay. This burlesque show bar vehicle is affectionately known by the locals as the tranny tram.
Personally, I wasn't too keen on advertising in the first place. I used to like them when they were playing green and cream, but not painted as gaudily as they are now. But then times change, don't they? You have to move with the times, I suppose.
Don't get many of them on a tram now, John.
No, you don't. People are beginning to realise that environmentally we're blasting all this car exhaust and bus exhaust into the atmosphere. There's one thing about them, they're a clean vehicle. And I mean, they can do the job of moving people. The railways and the trams are going to be really big in the future.
In Manchester, the future has already arrived. Many more passengers than expected are buying tickets on the Metrolink. But this is a new kind of tram ride for the 90s. As these sleek beasts leave the city, they adapt to today's fierce transport climate and turn into fast suburban trains. Yesterday's bone shaker has become the super tram of tomorrow.
Go for a ride on the car. For we know how cosy the tops of the tram cars are. The seats are so small and there's not much to pay. You sit close together and spoon all the way, and